Hey everybody, welcome to End Times Bible Study. My name's Diane and this is an in-person Bible study we do, and it's live streamed through Facebook and then it's uploaded to my YouTube channel the next day. So glad you joined us. Our topic tonight is the destruction of Babylon continued, Jeremiah 51. So we have been studying the destruction of Babylon, and we're still seeking to answer the question as to what city actually is Mystery Babylon. Oh, and I see somebody is on the live stream. If you could just type me a comment, can you hear me okay, and does the sound seem like it's in sync? Because I've had problems with that the last 2 weeks where the audio has been out of sync. If it's not in sync, I don't really know how to fix it on the live stream. But anyways, if you guys can provide some feedback, that would be nice. But anyways, so we're just trying to figure out who is Mystery Babylon, like what city really fits that bill. And so far we've covered Revelation 17, which is the total description of Mystery Babylon. Then Revelation 18, we covered that. And these videos are all posted on my channel if you want to go back and watch any of them if you missed them. But that clearly describes the destruction of a city known as Babylon the Great, which that is occurring at the end of the 7-year tribulation. And that is clear from Revelation 16. I think it's 19, but it's at the end of that chapter of the seventh bowl judgment. Let me just turn there. The seventh bowl has been poured out, and we have this massive worldwide earthquake. Cities of the earth collapse, and God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup of the wine of the fury of his wrath. So that, it was verse 19. So that happens at the very end, right before Armageddon is going to take place, that this destruction occurs. So now the interesting thing is that there's all these Old Testament prophecies also talking about the destruction of Babylon, and they're clearly correlating, like Jeremiah 50 and 51 in particular, and also there's like Isaiah 13 and 14 and a few others, but they clearly correlate with 17 and 18. There's portions. Now, there does seem to be some that perhaps was fulfilled at the time of this, because there is a pattern in Old Testament prophecies where sometimes even like talking about Jesus, there's just one verse, and both of it, the first part's talking about when he was coming the first time, and then the second part's talking about when he's coming the second time. So we do see that pattern, so it's not unheard of. But pretty much, what happened was, at this period of time, we've got to get the setting down, which if you've been watching this, you probably remember this from previous weeks. But Jeremiah is a prophet, so he is writing this according to chapter 51, which we'll get to tonight at the end. It appears that he is writing this in the 4th year of King Zedekiah, who is the last king of Judah. He reigned for 11 years, and this says it's in the 4th year of Zedekiah. Now, the situation is that Babylon, Judah, the nation of Judah, is a vassal state of Babylon at this point in time. And that had been the case since like 605 BC. And the kings of Judah kept rebelling against Nebuchadnezzar and suffering bad consequences. So the final rebellion is going to occur in Zedekiah's 9th year. So this is written in the 4th year. So Jerusalem is still there. The temple is still there. When the rebellion occurs in the 9th year, there's a 2-year siege against Jerusalem, which ends very badly for Zedekiah. And Jerusalem is basically destroyed. The temple is destroyed. The walls are destroyed. The people are either killed or taken into captivity into Babylon. Now, we already have some people in captivity in Babylon at this point, because Daniel was taken. He was in the initial group. Then there was like another group that had been taken. So, finally all of them more or less get taken. So that's kind of the setup here. And so we do see Babylon being taken over by the Medo-Persian kingdom while Daniel's there, but basically they took over, they kind of snuck into the city, they diverted the water of the Euphrates, and I think got in under the wall, if I remember correctly. But anyways, they kind of snuck in, took it over, and then Darius the Mede is talked about in Daniel, which again, we're like, was that the same person as Cyrus the Great, or is it a different person? But nevertheless, they are both talked about in the book of Daniel. And they took up headquarters in Babylon, and everything just kept on rolling. So the city wasn't destroyed, and it really just fell into decay over the centuries. I mean, it was a capital city of some of these other empires. I think even once the Greeks had conquered, Babylon was the capital for a while for part, the Seleucid Empire or whatever. And then eventually they're just like, well, we're going to move the capital elsewhere, and they took most of the people out, and it just kind of fell into decay. So today it's like basically kind of a ruins in southern Iraq, which is where that it originally was. Okay, so that's kind of trying to set things up. And let's see. All right, so let's start reading Jeremiah 51. This is a really long chapter. It has 64 verses, and 50 was also very long. So it's, as I read it, I try to notice things that are in common, like the same words or the same phrases, and then I try to make that note in my Bible as we go. And a lot of it's on the outline too, but it's just trying to keep all this stuff straight, because a lot of it repeats itself, and to me, if it's like it's repeating itself, that's important. We should take note of that. So we're going to start with 51. I'm not going to make any comments till we get to verse 6, so we'll just read straight out. All right, so this is what the Lord says. Behold, I will stir up against Babylon and against the people of Leb-Kamai, which that's a code name for Chaldea, also referred to as Babylonia, the spirit of a destroyer. I will send strangers to Babylon to winnow her and empty her land, for they will come against her from every side in her day of disaster. Do not let the archer bend his bow or put on his armor. Do not spare her young men. Devote all her army to destruction, and they will fall slain in the land of the Chaldeans or Babylonians, and pierced through in her streets. For Israel and Judah have not been abandoned by their God, the Lord of hosts, though their land is full of guilt before the Holy One of Israel. And if you recall, this is why the judgment came upon Judah, was the gross idolatry and failure to follow, what the Lord had told them to do. All right, verse 6. Flee from Babylon, escape with your lives. Do not be destroyed in her punishment, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will pay her what she deserves. All right, so that's actually repeated, it correlates with Revelation 18:4, which we'll look at, but it's also in Jeremiah 50, verse 8, and 51:45. So it's really like 4 times that's there. So that's quite a lot. Revelation 18:4, when it's talking about fallen is Babylon the Great, and then it says down in verse 4, I heard another voice from heaven say, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins or contract any of her plagues. And then if we look back to 50, verse 8, that says, flee from the midst of Babylon, depart from the land of the Chaldeans, be like the he-goats that lead the flock. Okay, so that was 8, and then we can read it now, but it's also in verse 45 of 51. So let's flip over to that, and that says, come out of her, my people, save your lives, each of you, from the fierce anger of the Lord. So, but we talked about this last week, I think, because if you're talking about the Babylon that it was existing at this point in time with Jeremiah, and you have these captives who were there, how they couldn't leave, and it says, come out of her, my people. They're captives there. They're exiled into Babylon, and and also by the 11th year, of Zedekiah, everything's destroyed anyways. There was nothing really even to go back to. When the people did start going back under the Persians, it was, and you can read about that in Ezra and Nehemiah, it was very difficult. They had so many challenges because everything was just a total ruin. But so that's an interesting point. I'm not really sure how that would play in if we're thinking of this as like, obviously at the end of the tribulation, whatever city this is talking about. Yeah, maybe it'll be clear to the people at that point in time, because I'm still somewhat mystified on what that could mean exactly. All I can say, it must have like a future fulfillment that we're not sure. I mean, anybody either on the live stream or you guys who are here in person, anybody have any thoughts? No? Okay. We're all mystified. All right. So moving on to verse 7, it says, Babylon was a gold cup in the hand of the Lord, making the whole earth drunk. The nations drank her wine, therefore the nations have gone mad. So there's a couple other references to like going mad. Let's see. We had 50 verse 38 was talking about what happened? Oh, okay. It just says, for it is a land of graven images, and the people go mad over idols. So that was a reference to going mad. And then also then in 51:39, it talks again about, I think, going mad. Let's see here. 39. While they are flushed with heat, I will serve them a feast, and I will make them drunk. This is God speaking, so that they may revel. Then they will fall asleep forever and never wake up, declares the Lord. So it talks about, well, I guess that was more about on getting drunk. And then, and also just Revelation 17. I mean, this is, this verse is talking about God holding the cup, like this cup of wrath. But in Revelation 17, the mystery Babylon, who's represented by this woman, it says that she held, this is verse 4, she held in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality, which again is the spiritual fornication. It's like the idolatry that's going on between the kings of the earth and this city. And so there was that. And then in verse 6, I could see the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and the witnesses for Jesus. But there's a really interesting passage, Jeremiah 25, this whole chapter is so long, we don't have that much time. I would love to go into more detail on 25, because it's talking about God making these nations drink this cup of wrath. The first part of this of chapter 25 in Jeremiah talks about the 70 years of the captivity. So that's how Daniel knew, and how he knew to start praying in Daniel chapter 9. He knew that their 70 years of captivity was coming to an end based on Jeremiah's prophecy. So the whole first part is talking about that, but then it has the cup of God's wrath starting in verse 15. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, said to me. Take from my hand this cup of the wine of wrath, and make all the nations to whom I send you drink from it. And they will drink and stagger and go out of their minds because of the sword that I will send among them. So I took the cup from the Lord's hand and made all the nations drink from it, each one to whom the Lord had sent me, to make them a ruin, an object of horror and contempt and cursing, as they are to this day. Which again, really, when I'm reading this whole passage in context, it really feels to me more like it's talking about like the end times, like possibly Armageddon or something, it's because the nations that he's going to go on to mention, a lot of them are still tooting along. They are not just a total ruin. It starts off, so Jerusalem and the cities of Judah. So they, as we talked about, they came under judgment. So it's kings and officials. Then it says Pharaoh, king of Egypt, his officials, his leaders, and all of his people. Which, Egypt has had, seem like they've suffered judgment from God over the centuries, but they're still there today, existing as a country. Then it says all the mixed tribes. So I'm not sure, that's like Arabs or what. So I know when we did this before, where it said the word mixed, it was actually like Arabs. All the kings of Uz. Now Job was from Uz, but it's unclear exactly where that was. You can look at your little map I gave you guys for some of this, because it's going to show you the kings of the Philistines. So this is the Gaza Strip, Ashkelon, Gaza, Ekron, and the remnant of Ashdod which I believe, let me look at this other map, because some of these cities, like Ashdod, Ashkelon is still there. Yeah, I mean, but you can see on the map here, those are those cities it's talking about for Philistia. So, and some seem to still be going today, Gaza and all that. Okay, then it had, and of course for Egypt over here, we already mentioned them. And then, let's see, Edom, Moab, and the Ammonites. Well, that's like modern day Jordan over here. So, that's that. Then it has the kings of Tyre and Sidon, which those were Phoenician cities up here today in modern day Lebanon, which they still show them today. So, which I think wasn't it Tyre that was horrifically destroyed by Alexander the Great? Like but obviously these cities end up, they get destroyed, but they seem to come back and keep going for the most part. And then the kings of the coastlands across the sea. Now that, I was like, okay, the sea is the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm wondering if it's more talking about, coastlands across the sea, if it's talking about like up here to Turkey and like North Africa areas. Like that was, because those seem to be mentioned a lot in the Bible. So I was like, that might be what that's referring to. I'm not really sure. And then it says Dedan, Tema, and Buz, which I think Buz, they don't know where that is, but Dedan and Tema are Saudi Arabia. They're, somewhere in this vicinity. I don't think they show them on there. And then, let's see, all the kings of Arabia, so again, Saudi Arabia, and all the kings of the mixed tribes who dwell in the desert, so presumably the Arabian desert. And then all the kings of Zimri, Elam, and Media, which I think, again, they're not really sure where Zimri was, but it's somewhere to do with, like, Elam is here. You've got Persia, Media, that whole area. And all the kings of the north, both near and far, one after another. And then it says all the kingdoms on the face of the earth. And after all of them, the king of Shishak will drink it too, which Shishak is a code name for Babylon. So, I don't know, like, this whole thing is interesting because when you look at the map and you think about all these countries mentioned, they are all Muslim countries today, other than Israel, So, again, I'm just thinking, is this tying in with the whole end times? And, when they say that's the whole world, for them, I think this kind of was the whole world at the time. They didn't know where,
America.
Yeah, America was like pretty much, who was even here at like 605 BC or, in that time frame. So, so anyways, that is interesting, but it talks about them being made to drink this cup. And then it even says, then you are to tell them that this is what the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel says, drink, get drunk, and vomit. Fall down and never get up again because of the sword I will send among you. So it's talking about drinking this cup and so forth. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting, kind of an interesting correlation with, Revelation 17. They've got the cup of evil basically, but then God has his cup of judgment and all that. So, all right. So now let's keep going here. We're going to look at verses 8 through 9 now. Suddenly Babylon has fallen and been shattered. Wail for her, get her balm for her pain, perhaps she can be healed. We tried to heal Babylon, but she could not be healed. Abandon her. Let each of us go to his own land. Which again, that was chapter 50, verse 16 also talked about going to your own land. Let's see. It says, in the face of the oppressor's sword, each will turn to his own people. Each will flee to his own land. So again, somewhat cryptic, other than just maybe is like these are kind of allies of Mystery Babylon. They see the destruction as we see discussed in Revelation 18. They're watching it from a distance. And they're just like, well, there's nothing we can do. So they basically take themselves off to wherever they were from. Like, and I'm still, you guys know my theory that I think it could be a nuclear destruction, just like her judgment extends to the sky and reaches to the clouds, and it is destroyed in 1 hour. That's 3 times stated in Revelation 18. And also it's destroyed by fire. So everything's burning. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but it's an interesting theory that could be the case. So, all right, so then verse 10, the Lord has brought forth our vindication. Come, let us tell in Zion what the Lord our God has accomplished. So again, that's kind of hearkening to both Revelation 18:20 plus 19, 2 through 3, where in chapter 19, they're rejoicing in heaven over the destruction of Babylon. It's like, this is so great. Finally, we're vindicated. And 18:20 says, rejoice over her, O heaven, O saints and apostles and prophets, because God has pronounced for you his judgment against her. So, so that's kind of correlating there. All right. And so then verse 11, it says, sharpen the arrows, fill the quivers. The Lord has aroused the spirit of the king of the Medes, because his plan is aimed at Babylon to destroy her. For it is the vengeance of the Lord, vengeance for his temple. And also it's said about vengeance for the temple in chapter 50, verse 28. It says, listen to the fugitives and refugees from the land of Babylon, declaring in Zion the vengeance of the Lord our God, the vengeance for his temple. So again, when this is written, the temple is still standing, but the temple had been desecrated from, the Babylonians going into the temple, and they had taken out all like their, gold and silver, whatever, all their temple stuff had been robbed from the Jewish temple and taken back to Babylon. So there was that. But if we're looking at this in terms of so that could be a fulfillment at the time, but then a later fulfillment, is it just, we had this temple destroyed, then it's rebuilt, then in 70 AD it's destroyed again, and then there's no temple currently, but we know there will be one rebuilt during the tribulation, that the Antichrist will enter and commit, the abomination that causes desolation. So there is, so then there's that. So is it talking about that incident? Is that like a later fulfillment, talking about the Antichrist desolating it? So that's a thought. But anyways, let's see. But the king of the Medes, so that this is the Median Empire, which really was pretty extensive, because it says Elam, is here, and Persia was down here. But I mean, it seems like, wow, the Median Empire was pretty extensive. And then, it becomes the Persian Empire, which was, very extensive. So, but the Median kings, Media's up here. So technically, we talked about this last time, but really that is to the north. I mean, here's Babylon here. Right. So it does seem like it's talking, they were north from, because we were saying last time it seemed like it was more east, which it is to the east quite a bit, but also north does fit with that. So, but so the king of the Medes, that's modern day North Iran. And bear in mind, that is one of the nations of the Gog-Magog alliance, as Iran is one of those nations along with Turkey. So, all right, so verse 12 says, raise a banner against the walls of Babylon, post the guard, station the watchmen, prepare the ambush, for the Lord has devised and accomplished what he spoke against the people of Babylon. So raising a banner is, I looked this up, so it says it's a sign of victory, and the one who raises the banner is the one who is conquered and is in control. So, and I think it also could be like, just you're going out to war, everybody's got their banners so you know where your people are and so forth. But it's also that there's raise a banner in 50 verse 2 and also 51:27. So we'll get to that one, but we'll move on. So, all right, verse 13. You who dwell by many waters, rich in treasures, your end has come. The thread of your life is cut. So again, the original Babylon was on the Euphrates. It was also there was a lot of waters. The Tigris wasn't far. They had a river running through. Let me see. Which map is? Oh yeah, let me see. Wait, I think I've got, I want to see that map, but I've actually got it here. Because you've got Babylon down here, but you can see there's a lot of waterways, and everything's eventually then funneling down into the Persian Gulf, which is I think like 300 miles away. But this did kind of make me think of Revelation 17 with the Mystery Babylon, because it does talk about she sits on many waters in verse 1. Now it does then later say that the waters represent like all the peoples and languages and nations of the earth. So obviously a worldwide control is being exercised from this city onto the people. But I was like, well, it was rich in treasures. It's a wealthy city. And you dwell by many waters. So, all right, verse 14, the Lord of hosts has sworn by himself, surely I will fill you up with men as with locusts, and they will shout in triumph over you. So I do think that could be a near fulfillment with the way they snuck in. All the troops just, snuck in and took over Babylon, and fairly bloodlessly. I mean, I think there was some fighting, but by and large, I don't think there was too much destruction or people killed. I mean, Belshazzar, the regent, was killed. And that was the whole writing on the wall and the hand that appeared. And then that night, I mean, it foretold his doom, because he had taken stuff that some things, was it gold cups or something from the Jewish temple. He had them brought out and he was using them. And then they received judgment like pretty much immediately, like that night. So, and he was slain. All right, so then verse 15, the Lord made the earth by his power. He established the world by his wisdom and stretched out the heavens by his understanding. When he thunders, the waters in the heavens roar. He causes the clouds to rise from the ends of the earth. He generates the lightning with the rain and brings forth the wind from his storehouses. So that's kind of cool. And I've noticed there's a pattern where often it does seem like you have these kind of Old Testament dire passages of impending judgment, and there will be something about God being the creator and talking about those attributes of God. So that's there. And then verse 17 says, every man is senseless and devoid of knowledge. Every goldsmith is put to shame by his idols, for his molten images are a fraud, and there is no breath in them. They are worthless, a work to be mocked. In the time of their punishment they will perish. The portion of Jacob is not like these, for he is the maker of all things, and the tribe of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. So it's really contrasting. God is the creator of he's created the creation. I mean, everything. And yet we have these idols that men are creating themselves. They're making the idol and then they're worshiping it, and kind of pointing out the absolute, basically, stupidity of that, because every man is senseless and devoid of knowledge. So we are worshiping the creation instead of the creator. All right, verse 20. So now he's talking to Babylon here. He says, you are my war club. And notice he's going to say, I shatter 9 times in these next 3 verses. You are my war club, my weapon for battle. With you I shatter nations. With you I bring kingdoms to ruin. With you I shatter the horse and rider. With you I shatter the chariot and driver. With you I shatter man and woman. With you I shatter the old man and the youth. With you I shatter the young man and the maiden. With you I shatter the shepherd and his flock. With you I shatter the farmer and his oxen. With you I shatter the governors and officials. Before your very eyes I will repay Babylon and all the dwellers of Chaldea or Babylonia for the evil they have done in Zion. So again, God was like using Babylon to bring judgment, but yet they were still doing evil. I mean, they still chose to do that, and they will receive judgment for it. So let me see. And then in verse 25, behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain. So again, here's another correlation. We might have looked at this before, but mountain is referring to a kingdom. And again, we've got those 7 mountains on which Mystery Babylon is sitting, which appears it's really not physical mountains, it's the physical kingdoms. What? No. Huh?
Aren't there 7 continents?
7 continents? Well, I guess I hadn't thought about that, but
Very interesting.
well, yeah, you should have thought of that a couple weeks ago when we were talking about it. Well, at the time we were saying that the 7 heads of the dragon and the beast, they both have these 7 heads, and that it seemed to be these 7 kingdoms that had existed. The first one was Egypt, then it was Assyria, then it was Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome, and then the Islamic Caliphate or Ottoman Empire came after that. So that's like 7 empires. And then the kind of like the final kingdom is the revised either Roman Empire or Islamic Caliphate, depending on where you are in the scheme of things with that. I used to think the Roman Empire. Now I'm convinced now it's actually the Islamic Caliphate. So we'll see. But at any event, I mean, did you have any other comments on how the continents might tie in?
No, but I think there's the third, which is that it's not Babylon, but is just a international ruling class.
Okay. Well, we shall see. We shall see. All right. Okay, so let me see where we were. Okay, so I'm against you, O destroying mountain, you who devastate the whole earth, declares the Lord. I will stretch out my hand against you. I will roll you off. I will roll you over the cliffs and turn you into a charred mountain. So again, the imagery is of something burnt. No one shall retrieve from you a cornerstone or a foundation stone, because you will become desolate forever, declares the Lord. So again, the original Babylon, they did recover stones. They hauled them off and I think used it to build the closest cities, like a 20-minute walk away from there, called Hillel, and I think even some other nearby cities. So they have used those bricks. So this wasn't fulfilled, in history. So again, is this talking about then the very end destruction of Babylon, where it's just, there's no coming back from it. All right, verse 27, raise a banner in the land. So that's like the 3rd time it talks about raising a banner. And it says, blow the ram's horn among the nations, prepare the nations against her, summon the kingdoms against her.
In the King James Version, it doesn't say anything about a banner.
Oh, really? What does the King James Version say?
So 27 says, set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations against her. Call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and how's that one? Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her. Cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars.
Caterpillars.
And even in the other one, it didn't say anything about a banner.
You know what? I think the word standard, I think that's what it is.
Oh,
So it says raise up a standard. I think that must mean the same thing as a banner. So, but that would be what I would think. But that's actually what it says about the caterpillars, because my version says bring up forces like swarming locusts.
Well, and in the other one, in verse 14, where you said locusts, it says caterpillars in King James. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Well, you can always, yeah, I mean, there's always a little bit of difference between the translations, and you can always pull up, like Bible Hub, you can pull up, like put in the verse, it'll give you translations, every translation out there pretty much. And then you can also look at it in the Greek and see what the Greek words are, and then because you can just click Greek and then it'll give you the Greek, and then it has like Strong's Concordance. You can click on the different words and go see what they actually meant in the Greek or Hebrew. I mean, I guess this would be Hebrew since it's Old Testament, but anyways, yeah, so that's interesting. But yeah, so it's saying summon the kingdoms against her, and the three they mention again are like these. They mention Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz, and they're all up here in this vicinity. So again, that is north of Babylon, which is down there. And so, let me see, the exact locations of those today, from what my commentary said, it said that Ararat is present-day Armenia, near Lake Van. Mini is south of Lake Urmia, which is western Iran, and then Ashkenaz just is near Lake Urmia and Ararat. So, so the Medes, they're mentioned also. Let's see, which verse are we even on right now? We're on verse 28. So it mentions the Medes there. The Medes were mentioned back in verse 11, and then where else were they mentioned? Let's see. Oh, okay, 11 and 28. So yeah, that's the verse we're at. So yes, they mentioned the Medes a couple of times. So that's pretty specific. And like we said, I mean, Babylon was conquered by the Medo-Persian Empire. So this is interesting. This is written, and Babylon is this major empire that seems unstoppable. And yet the prophecy is saying it's going to be conquered by the Medes, and they were. But again, not in all the full details. So I'm even wondering for, I don't know, the final Babylon is somehow Iran involved in that, because that would be the Medes, the Medo-Persian Empire. So, okay, so let me see where we are here. All right, so then it says, I guess we didn't even read that verse 28. Prepare the nations for battle against her, the kings of the Medes, their governors and all their officials and all the lands they rule. And then in verse 29, the earth quakes and writhes because the Lord's intentions against Babylon stand, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. So again, there was the major earthquake mentioned in Revelation 16:18. So that could be a reference, or I'm like, is it just kind of more poetic, sort of figurative language that is being mentioned? But it does correlate, so who knows. All right, verse 30. The warriors of Babylon have stopped fighting. They sit in their strongholds. Their strength is exhausted. They have become like women. Babylon's homes have been set ablaze. So again, correlating with fire. The bars of her gates are broken. One courier races to meet another, and messenger follows messenger to announce to the king of Babylon that his city has been captured from end to end. And I did wonder, because I think that is kind of what happened historically, was that the actual king, I think, wasn't it Nabonidus? We did that in the Daniel thing, and his son Belshazzar was like the regent. And Nabonidus was often out in Arabia building temples to the moon god Sid and all that, you recall from that study. But at that point, he had gone back to to Babylon, because they were under this attack. And I think most of the empire had pretty much been conquered at this point. And the city of Babylon was the last holdout. So he wasn't actually in Babylon that night, but I think he was somewhere nearby, was my recollection from when we did the Daniel study. So anyways, so there's that. Then verse 32, the fords have been seized, the marshes set on fire, and the soldiers are terrified. So again, fire. For this is what the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, says. The daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor at the time it is trampled. In just a little while, her harvest time will come. And we talked about this last week about when it says the daughter of Babylon. I think that's led to a lot of these other theories about the daughter of Babylon. Well, that's the United States, or, it's somewhere else. But biblically, when we were looking at this last week, it'll say the daughter of Jerusalem, whatever. It just means the inhabitants. When it says daughter, it's talking about the inhabitants. So anybody out there, either here or online, if you have information to the contrary that shows that there's more to the story, I'd be happy to see that. But from what I could gather just on my own research, that is what it was talking about. Now, as far as the threshing, it says when an area for threshing is trampled down to prepare it for threshing and winnowing, the people knew that the time to harvest would soon come. Likewise, when Babylon was trampled down, the people would know that God's harvest for judgment has arrived. All right, so now verses 34 and 35 is basically like the Jews' kind of complaints against Babylon. So it says, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, has devoured me. He has crushed me. He has set me aside like an empty vessel. He has swallowed me like a monster. He filled his belly with my delicacies and vomited me out. May the violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babylon, says the dweller of Zion. May my blood be on the dwellers of Chaldea, or Babylonia, says Jerusalem. So, when it says vomit out, that may refer to the eventual release of the captives. He's vomited me out. One thing I did think of again, though, with Revelation 17, it talks about the Antichrist and his 10 king federation, that they hate the woman, which represents the city that rules over the kings of the earth, and it says they eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And I'm like, and that's such a strange, eat her flesh, what does that mean? But it is interesting that they were talking about, he's devoured, the king of Nebuchadnezzar has devoured me. It's like, and then he's vomited me out. It's like it's almost like the imagery of eating Jerusalem. So, all right, then verse 36. Therefore, this is what the Lord says. Behold, I will plead your case and take vengeance on your behalf. I will dry up her sea, which again, the sea, there wasn't a sea in the original Babylon. The Persian Gulf was the nearest thing, but I will dry up her sea and make her springs run dry. Babylon will become a heap of rubble, a haunt for jackals, or it can also mean serpents or dragons instead of just jackals. An object of horror and scorn without inhabitant. And so a couple of points on that was just that, again, Revelation 18:1 is talking about how, Babylon becomes this haunt for all these animals. Let's see. She has become a lair for demons and a haunt for every unclean spirit, every unclean bird, and every detestable beast. And then also it was mentioned about, let's see, the sea is also mentioned again in verse 42, so we'll get to that. And then, where was the other thing on? Also Jeremiah 50:39 talked about the animals. Let's see, 50:39. So the desert creatures and hyenas will live there, and ostriches will dwell there. Let's see. It will never again be inhabited or lived in from generation to generation. So that's correlating there. Okay, so moving on to verse 38, it says, they will roar together like young lions. They will growl like lion cubs. While they are flushed with heat, I will serve them a feast, and I will make them drunk so that they may revel. Then they will fall asleep forever and never wake up, declares the Lord. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams with male goats. And let me just see if there was a couple points on that. Yeah, I noticed, I thought about that when Daniel 7 gives the first three empires, and then it goes to the Antichrist empire as the fourth beast. The first three empires, you have Babylon as the lion, then you had Medo-Persia represented by the bear, and then you had Greece represented by the leopard, and then those three animals are mentioned as the beast rising out of the sea in Revelation 13, that those are the same 3 animals mentioned that make up like this beast empire, which seems like then the Antichrist empire would be kind of a conglomeration of those 3 empires. If I'm like I didn't quite grasp all this, I don't think before, but the more I've thought about it and see, but they are mentioning the lions here, and they're talking about Babylon, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But any comments on that point or thoughts? No? Okay. Bo, I'm sure you've got something you want to say. No? All right. Okay, so then it says, again, they say Shishak, the code name for Babylon, how Shishak has been captured, the praise of the whole earth has been seized. What a horror Babylon has become among the nations. Again, it talks about the sea. The sea has come up over Babylon, and she is covered in turbulent waves. And again, Revelation 18:21 says, then a mighty angel picked up a stone the size of a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, with such violence the great city of Babylon will be cast down, never to be seen again. And then it says, her cities have become a desolation, a dry and arid land. So cities, again, Babylon is like, it's a city, but it also is like the whole, like the region. Yeah, the Babylonian Empire. So it seems like it's encompassing more than just this one city. It's like the nations around it, or the cities around it are being mentioned. And I think Dean brought that up last week. But her cities have become a desolation, a dry and arid land, a land where no one lives, where no son of man passes through. Nuked. That's what I'm thinking. Who knows? Verse 44, I will punish Bel in Babylon. I will make him spew out what he's swallowed. And Bel was like their god. Like Marduk was like the main god, but it seemed like Marduk kind of then morphed into Bel, which was like Baal worship, which meant Lord. And then I was reading an interesting article, and I'm trying to get into it tonight, but because I was like, well, if we're talking about a revised Islamic caliphate, well then, is Allah tied in? And I did find an article that was talking about the connections from Marduk to Baal, Allah, which Allah also I think just means Lord. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We'll get into that more later as we go with this study. But I was like, that's interesting. And then it says, the nations will no longer stream to him, even the wall of Babylon will fall. When it says the nations will no longer stream to him, I swear I thought of Mecca, because that is Joel Richardson. That's who he thinks Mystery Babylon could be, Mecca and like the Saudi Arabian kingdom, which does have actual kings, by the way. But in Mecca, all the Muslims are required or strongly recommended to make a pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in their lifetime, to that Kaaba, the big cube that has it houses the black stone. And so apparently that is the most visited city in the entire world. And so I was like, well, if it was talking about Mecca, and that's all these idols and the destruction of the idolatry, which is kind of the center of the Islamic idolatry, you'd have to say would be Mecca if you're talking about Islam. So we'll talk about that more later when we go into more detail on Mecca, but I don't know. These are just thoughts that come to my mind as I'm doing this, so I could be off, but that's just what I was thinking. All right, verse 45, again, come out of her, my people, save your lives, each of you, from the fierce anger of the Lord. Do not let your heart grow faint, and do not be afraid. When the rumor is heard in the land, for a rumor will come 1 year, and then another the next year, of violence in the land and of ruler against ruler. And I'm like, that's interesting. I don't really know exactly what that means, but I mean, if you think about even just right now, we keep having all these rumors of war, and really it's like, oh, supposedly World War III has been supposed to be breaking out since like 2 years ago, you know, and now it still is like right on the verge, it seems, of, you know, that may be coming to fruition, unfortunately, because things are not looking good. But it's almost like the rumor, you know, 1 year and then the next year, and then violence in the land and ruler against ruler. That actually sounds like it's coming pretty close at this point in time. Therefore, behold, the days are coming when I will punish the idols of Babylon. So I thought that's interesting language. You're going to punish the idols of Babylon. Her entire land will suffer shame, and all her slain will lie fallen within her. Then heaven and earth and all that is in them will shout for joy over Babylon, because the destroyers from the north will come against her. So now it's saying destroyers from the north versus the Medes. So, but again, correlating back to Revelation 19, where they're rejoicing in heaven over the destruction of Babylon. Verse 49, Babylon must fall on account of the slain of Israel, just as the slain of all the earth have fallen because of Babylon. So Revelation 18:24, that's the last verse in that chapter. It says, and there was found in her, Babylon, the blood of prophets and saints and of all who had been slain on the earth. So again, that's talking about during the tribulation period is what's being referenced there. So, and then it says in verse 50, you who have escaped the sword, depart and do not linger. So again, it's almost like that verse is about, you know, go back to your own land sort of thing. Remember the Lord from far away and let Jerusalem come to mind. And then 51, we are ashamed because we have heard reproach. Disgrace has covered our faces because foreigners have entered the holy places of the Lord's house. So again, is that like the abomination that causes desolation being referenced here? You know, or, I mean, certainly there have been other fulfillments like Antiochus Epiphanes who violated the temple and so forth, but verse 52, therefore, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will punish her idols, and throughout her land the wounded will groan. So again, punish her idols. Even if Babylon ascends to the heavens and fortifies her lofty stronghold, the destroyers I send will come against her, declares the Lord. And then it says in 54, the sound of a cry comes from Babylon, the sound of great destruction. Now remember in chapter Revelation 18, it's actually verses 9, 11, 15, and 18. You had those groups of people, the kings, the merchants, and the sailors and so forth, all the people associated with the ships. They're all like crying and wailing and mourning and making, you know, a big ruckus. So that, to me, correlated with that. The sound of great destruction from the land of the Chaldeans. For the Lord will destroy Babylon. He will silence her mighty voice. The waves will roar like great waters. The tumult of their voices will resound. For a destroyer is coming against her, against Babylon. Her warriors will be captured and their bows will be broken. For the Lord is a God of retribution. He will repay in full. I will make her princes and wise men drunk, along with her governors, officials, and warriors. They will fall asleep forever and not wake up. So again, you know, keep seeing that repeated. Declares the king, whose name is the Lord of hosts. This is what the Lord of hosts says. Babylon's thick walls will be leveled and her high gates consumed by fire. Which again, like that did not happen in history. So the labor of the people will be for nothing. The nations will exhaust themselves to fuel the flames. Which I don't really understand that. The nations would fuel the flames? Like, wouldn't you be trying to put it out? Like, so yeah, I'm not really sure what that means. But, all right, so that's really like the end of the prophecy there. And then I think we read 59 through 64 before. So I'm just going to read through it really quick because we're getting short on time. This is the message that Jeremiah the prophet gave to the quartermaster Seraiah, son of Neriah, the son of Messiah, when he went to Babylon with King Zedekiah of Judah in the 4th year of Zedekiah's reign. Jeremiah had written on a single scroll about all the disaster that would come upon Babylon, all the words that had been written concerning Babylon. So you've got this guy Sariah going with King Zedekiah to Babylon, and in the 4th year of Zedekiah's reign. So for whatever reason, there was some sort of delegation that had, Zedekiah had been summoned to Babylon. I don't know if it was to bring some tribute or what he was going for exactly, but and Jeremiah said to Sariah, when you get to Babylon, see that you read all these words aloud and say, O Lord, you have promised to cut off this place so that no one will remain, neither man nor beast. Indeed, it will be desolate forever. Again, didn't happen when the Medo-Persians conquered them. But the other thing is like, well, who was he reading this to? I mean, I'm assuming it wasn't to Nebuchadnezzar, but I'm assuming it would have been to the exiles who were already there, the people that were already in captivity. That was that they were the intended audience. I mean, it doesn't really say, so who knows? It says, when you finish reading the scroll, tie a stone to it and cast it into the Euphrates. Then you are to say, in the same way Babylon will sink and never rise again because of the disaster I will bring upon her, and her people will grow weary. Here end the words of Jeremiah. So again, correlating with Revelation 18:21 about the whole thing about the angel casting the millstone into the sea and so on and so forth. If you have time, go back and finish reading out the rest of this chapter 52, because it's really interesting. They think that was probably written about 25 years later, not written by Jeremiah, but added in, and possibly the same person who wrote Second Chronicles. Apparently this is very similar to the last chapter of Second Chronicles. So it kind of gives you the rest of the history on what happened, and it's really interesting. So all right, so that concludes 51. So we have gone through 50 and 51, which are very long chapters. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions or comments on what we read, or I don't know, just thoughts on how it seemed to correlate with Revelation 17 and 18? And no, nobody have anything to say? Okay. I mean, yeah, just to wrap it up, I mean, it does seem like there was a somewhat near fulfillment of some of what's there in talking about Babylon, but a lot of it really does seem to be talking about Babylon the Great from Revelation 17 and 18. So, to me, I find it a little bit difficult reading through, because you're trying to keep it in your mind. Okay, well, is this what happened then, or is this talking the future? So I think it's a lot to try to take in. But I mean, I think at the bottom line, kind of what I said last week, which is just that we serve an awesome God who knows the beginning from the end. And he's told us the beginning from the end. And it's also just so amazing to see how the Bible, written by, different, 40 different authors over, thousands of years in, 3 different languages, if you want to count Aramaic, which is a little bit of Aramaic, the other 2 are Hebrew and Greek. It's just, wow, how it all just weaves together is amazing. So, so I did want to just close. I was reading earlier today, Isaiah 45. And again, that's a really cool chapter. It's talking about God calls Cyrus the Great. And this is at least 150 years or more before Cyrus comes on the scene. But he's there, talked about in Isaiah 45. And we're going to get to Isaiah 13 and 14 too, which are also prophecies against Babylon. But at the end of 45, it just is saying, there is no, picking up in the middle of verse 21, there is no other God but me, a righteous God and Savior. There is none but me. Turn to me and be saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God and there is no other. By myself I have sworn, truth has gone out from my mouth, a word that will not be revoked. Every knee will bow before me, every tongue will swear allegiance or confess. And I think in the New Testament it's picked up and says, every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So, you may say, I don't want to do that now, but you're going to do it one day. One day everybody is going to make that confession, whether you want to or not. But if you wait till, if you die, it's too late. You're going to have to say that, but your chance to find salvation through Jesus Christ has ended. And also do not take the mark of the beast, because that is eternal damnation in the lake of fire. But it says, surely they will say of me, in the Lord alone are righteousness and strength. All who rage against him will come to him and be put to shame. In the Lord, all descendants of Israel will be justified and will exalt. So to me, that sounds like it's talking about Armageddon, all who rage against him. And then the descendants of Israel is the remnant of Israel that survives the tribulation, that comes to know Jesus Christ by the end of the tribulation. I think that's what it's saying there. But yeah, so if you don't know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, the Bible says, call on the name of the Lord and you will be saved. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. And so, we believe in Jesus, the Son of God. We come to him, and then you have a new life. It says that we're a new creature. Once we become a believer in Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit comes and lives in us, and then he leads us, and he brings conviction of sin. And, if you're a believer, you don't want to sin, and your sin grieves you when you do it. And if you are saying, oh, I believe in God and I'm a Christian, but your sin doesn't bother you, and you can read the Bible and find out what sin is if you don't know, then you might want to question if you really know the Lord or not. But 1 John 9 does say that if we confess our sin, he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So that's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So, we're saved by our faith in Jesus Christ. So just if you have any questions about that, or, would like me to pray with you or whatnot, feel free to reach out. So, all right, we are actually going to be out for the next 2 weeks. Next Wednesday is Valentine's Day, and then the following Wednesday I'm going to be out of pocket. So I think it's Wednesday, February 28th that we'll be back. And so I'll see. I mean, I was wanting to go to Isaiah 13 and 14. I'm almost thinking about, though, maybe going and doing a lesson on Mecca, just because it's really fascinating stuff. Joel Richardson's got, I think about 4 chapters in his book, Mystery Babylon, and it's very, very interesting. And I'm just wondering if that will help bring more clarity, just as we're discussing the options. What could it be for Mystery Babylon? And I think it is important to try to look at this because, again, if you're people who think Mystery Babylon is America and they're leaving America because of these verses about flee and get out, so if it's not America, and so you see what I'm saying? I think it is important because there's a lot, we really need to make sure we're biblically grounded and that we are doing our best to really see what the Bible says and follow, because there's so many theories out there. There's a lot of end time stuff is a big money making business as well, with people churning out all these books and all these different things and so forth. So, there's definitely a lot of interpretation that can be made and all that. So, all right, well, we're over an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and close. So we'll see you in a couple weeks, God willing, and God bless.